Well, it's another day in the wake of the NDP here in British Columbia, Canada. Last week, timed well with International Women's Day, a proposed legislative change to what must be contained in job postings is coming to the province. Let's take a look at some of the headlines and we'll get going from there. This one from CTV News. BC, employers soon to have to include wage, salary information in job postings. And another article on CTV News. BC genders pay gap, consultations to be held this spring to develop pay transparency legislation. The next one is from Curiosity. Closing the pay gap. BC will require employers to post their salary ranges. I think CTV summed up the reason for the change as well, with the comments coming from the Parliamentary Secretary for Gender Equity. The BC government has promised it will begin addressing the ongoing issue of wage disparity between men and women in the province. Grace Law, Parliamentary Secretary for Gender Equity, made the announcement in the legislature on International Women's Day and said consultations will begin this spring to develop new Made in BC pay transparency legislation. In her words, transparency and accountability is a step to address the pay gap in the BC. She said, a gap that is not just about gender, but is also racialized. It's bigger for Indigenous women and girls, those living with disabilities and newcomers. So why am I, a labor relations guy, doing a video about this? Well, this all seems fairly simple on the surface, but it has some pretty far-reaching effects. I'm going to walk you through where I think this is going. Firstly, and most importantly, for those businesses that have remained without a union, this is another way in which union organizers are going to be able to target your business. Why do I say that? Well, union organizers use feelings of unfairness as a tool to get employees to sign union cards. If you want to know about union card signing in BC, click this link. One of the challenges that has occurred for organizers is when employees don't know what everyone else earns. So if they are able to talk to one employee about their earnings in the non-union world, it could be vastly different from the earnings of another employee. So in order to campaign effectively on wages, an organizer would need the majority of staff to disclose their earnings to them. If salary information is now displayed on a job posting, they have access and can easily campaign on those wages. It's a very simple move for an organizer to put a collective agreement and its wages against a job posting and advertise them to employees. Now, obviously, wages are not the only reason why employees seek union representation, but it's another foot in the door. Particularly if there is unjust discrepancy in pay. Now, you might think there should never be a discrepancy in pay. However, when one employee is highly proficient at their job, it's in the employer's interest to reward that employee for their work. It's also more likely that employees with long service earn more money than those with short service. This becomes more difficult to justify in industrial or very standardized jobs. Making simple widgets, for example, would not take years to learn. However, production targets may be easier to track. There are various compensation strategies that may be better than base wages being different for employees in these types of jobs. Drop a comment on how compensation works in your company. Let us know whether you think it's fair and whether or not you'd recommend it to other employers. For unionized workplaces, the new legislation will likely have no effect. Wages and compensation are very visible to anyone who wants to see them. Everyone in a particular job earns what is set out in their collective agreements, and the Labour Code requires employers and unions to submit their agreements to the Labour Board, which publishes them on their website. A link to the website to find collective agreements in British Columbia is in the description below. So, what strategies could employers take in order to appropriately compensate employees while complying? Until we actually see what the new law comes out with, I think there are a few things employers could and should do. Firstly, get ahead of it. Reactionary employers may not look as appealing to work with or for if they only adapt as a matter of law. Post ranges, not the exact dollar per hour. That way you can leave room for entry-level workers as well as compensate for some experience without turning people off by your rate. I don't think negotiation is off the table with the new legislation. Use word of mouth or recommendations instead of job postings. This can be a fantastic way to make quality hires, especially if they are recommended by trustworthy employees. And fourthly, use recruiters. They keep you at an arm's length from the hiring process and can shroud the true employer. This may help to minimize any litigation arising from the new law that will no doubt happen. Like I said before, we won't know the limitations until we see the law. What if an employer posts an office manager job with a salary range of $40,000 to $250,000, commensurate with experience? How will that help with equity in any way? Especially if there is only one office manager. Only time will tell. If you'd like to know how this unravels and keep up to date with new employment laws, hit that subscribe button. If you are an employer who wants to continue to operate in the absence of a union and would like an assessment, or if you have a union and would like some assistance, I offer a zero obligation and 100% free consultation. Go ahead and email me through my website, which is in the description. Thanks as always for watching. Please like and subscribe and share. Cheers.